Right now, the streets of Helsinki are seeing a wave of organized pushback. Labor unions like the SAK are leading widespread protests and strikes against severe government cuts and new laws designed to restrict their right to strike. Finland has long held the title of the world's happiest country, famous for an expansive, deeply protective social safety net. But today, the state is rapidly tearing that very net apart. The architects of this sudden rollback are Prime Minister Petteri Orpo and Finance Minister Riikka Purra. They are pushing through an aggressive catalog of austerity measures and doing it largely unilaterally. The administration is operating under a strict mandate handed down from outside Finland's borders. This chart shows Finland's central government debt as a percentage of its gross domestic product. You can see the steep upward trajectory over the last few years, with debt now surging past 88% and on track to hit 95% by 2030. That spike crossed a critical red line for the European Union, prompting the European Council to formally open an excessive deficit procedure against Finland in early 2026. The EU and the International Monetary Fund issued a clear directive. Finland has to execute credible consolidation efforts. Specifically, they must improve their structural primary balance by 0.5% of their GDP every single year until the deficit is closed. This report from Scope Ratings officially downgrades Finland's credit rating to AA. It cites the sharp rise in the debt-to-GDP ratio and the continued high fiscal deficits, noting that even massive tax hikes, like a 25.5% VAT, aren't enough to stabilize the math. To appease international credit agencies and avoid further punitive measures, the Finnish government is effectively acting under economic receivership, forced to locate billions of euros in savings immediately. Historically, Finnish economic policy relied on a tripartite consensus, a system where the government, employers, and trade unions negotiated major changes together. The Orpo-Purra government bypassed this tradition entirely to fast-track their reforms. They slashed housing allowances, reduced earnings-related unemployment benefits after just 2 months, and completely removed the mandate for employers to pay workers for their first day of sick leave. These rapid, non-consensual cuts mark a departure from the Nordic collaborative model. The state is balancing its budget through a unilateral legislative push that moves with a speed that consensus-driven unions simply cannot match. The current alarming debt surge is the visible result of a massive structural collapse in the entire system's foundation. The core metric is the old age dependency ratio, over 38% in Finland. The system assumes young workers generate taxes to fund the elderly. Now, a shrinking youth base supports a massive aging block amid stagnant 1% growth, producing less wealth to pass upward. The underlying math simply no longer works. High taxes from a shrinking youth base can no longer cover the comprehensive medical and pension costs of a heavy aging demographic. To balance these impossible books, the government is leaning on mathematical formulas to systematically reduce the payouts retiring citizens actually receive. One primary mechanism is the life expectancy coefficient, an automatic calculation adjusting monthly pensions downward as average lifespans increase. For example, a person born in 1964 retiring in 2026 sees their starting pension permanently reduced by 5.4%. The state is taking biological population data and using it as an automatic mechanism to pass the financial shortfall of the demographic crisis directly down to the individual retiree. While the elderly face systematic cuts, the younger generation is absorbing an even harsher reality, carrying the weight of heavily taxed paychecks and mandatory employment pension contributions. Young Finns must legally pour a significant portion of their income into a pension system that government projections show will struggle with insolvency by the time they can draw from it. They pay record high rates to service past debts, watching their social mobility drop and the promised safety net dismantle piece by piece. Finland stands as an early warning for the rest of the developed world. When the unforgiving mathematics of international debt collide with a rapidly aging population, governments are being forced to make drastic budget cuts to stay solvent, and the math dictates exactly who will bear the brunt of them. By 2026, the European Union enters a phase of natural contraction. Deaths now actively outpace births. This Bank of Finland projection shows the reality on the ground. For both Finland and the broader Euro area, the working age population is locked into a steep downward trajectory. While immigration is often cited as a solution, projected levels of net migration are mathematically insufficient to fill a gap of this magnitude. When a welfare state can no longer rely on population growth to fund its promises, the numbers fail. It sets the stage for a zero-sum political struggle between generations. This creates a structural deadlock, the gerontocracy trap. Because the pyramid has flipped, older citizens now constitute a massive, dominant voting bloc in European democracies. Democratic politicians cannot win elections if they propose cutting retiree benefits. To even suggest it is to alienate the largest and most reliable group of voters. That leaves only one remaining target for government austerity: the younger workforce, who are numerically inferior and hold far less political leverage. The rules of democracy itself are forcing politicians to weaponize austerity against the young to protect the benefits of an untouchable elderly majority. Finland's current government, led by Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, serves as the blueprint for this targeted generational austerity. To balance the books, the state has introduced a raft of measures aimed squarely at workers. They are slashing housing allowances, eroding sick leave protections, and restricting the right to strike. At the same time, the government uses technical life expectancy coefficients to reduce future youth pensions. For those born in 1964, that coefficient alone represents a 5.4% cut to their retirement income. This is a pan-European contagion. The EU population is projected to peak in 2029 before entering terminal decline, a shift already fueling protest in France and stalling the economy in Germany. The Finnish model is a preview of Europe's future, governments cannibalizing the economic prospects of the youth to appease the aging majority. The original Nordic model was a generational social contract. You pay in while you're young, and the state cares for you when you're old. But that contract is being rewritten by an aging majority that the current workforce has no mathematical power to outvote. Young professionals face a stark choice: stay and surrender a massive portion of their income to a pension fund that faces insolvency, or find a way out. This leads to the ultimate opt-out for the mobile and the educated: capital and labor flight. Highly educated STEM professionals are increasingly abandoning Europe for high-growth, lower-tax environments like the United States. The European welfare state is facing an irreversible hemorrhaging of the only demographic capable of sustaining its mounting national debt. The system is paralyzed, trapped by a democratic design where the youth cannot vote to change the math. This creates a compounding death spiral. As the most capable youth exit, the tax burden on those who remain becomes heavier, which only accelerates the collapse. This demographic trap threatens to transform Europe into a heavily indebted Nordic museum, a place of beautiful architecture and history that has lost its economic momentum. The European welfare state is choosing to preserve its comfortable past.